All right. Good evening to everyone, to all our viewers, mostly from around Teleios systems, but around the world as well. Welcome to Teleios Power Hour Live. This this is our second broadcast, and we're excited to join you once again. Teleios Power Hour, for those who are coming for the first time, was started in Teleios as an initiative for engineers and other innovators to share what we've learned across the sets of areas we do development work and other kinds of creative work inside of. So we would have shared on technologies we've found or practices we've explored or interesting ways of getting things done. So we decided a little while back to share some of this with the wider world, and so thus became Power Hour Live. Last time, Power Hour Live, if you had checked out our post on the Teleios Code Jam page, if you had checked out that post last time, we looked at Facebook bots, and if you remember, when we looked at it, we essentially followed the instructions that Facebook provided to create your own bot, following Node.js, using Node.js to create your own interactive Facebook application on their Messenger platform. That went fairly well. At the end of it, we tried to extend the functionality just a bit, and it didn't work, but we got it to work afterwards. So you can see both the video for that as well as the code we would have written in our GitHub repo. That GitHub repo is github.com/Teleios systems. Also, taking things a little bit further, last time we took the Facebook samples and it was written in Node, so we converted it to .NET Core, just because we could really. And it was a fun exercise. Coming out of that, let me do a screen share here. A lot of screens, so please forgive me. Let's go to screen 2. Oh wow, I'll minimize that. So you should be seeing my screen. So here's the Teleios systems organization in GitHub and the repo called Messenger Platform Samples. So on the master branch, which we branched from the Facebook repo, you can see it's just a Node repo, a Node application. And if you remember last time, we demonstrated that Node application running in Azure. Now we've written it, essentially almost all the features in the Facebook sample we have reproduced using .NET Core. It was pretty fun to do, and one of the interesting things we saw, if you follow me here into the controllers, not the controllers, back up, into the Messenger handlers folder, and then down into this handler class. This code looks very, very similar to the Facebook code, and that's because we used one of the features of C# called dynamics or anonymous objects. So you can use anonymous objects to create types on the fly. And if you look at line 56 here, that's what we're doing. We're essentially saying make this button, make a new dynamic array containing anonymous objects, and specify these properties: type, URL, title. It's pretty exciting to do it, just to replicate what the samples had in app.js over here. So you can take a look. Let me scroll down a bit. Take a look at how this is composed in send GIF message. Similar kind of structure. So we reached out to the Visual Studio team, because in doing this, it was quite a bit of copy pasting. Copy, paste, and then reformat. But it's so similar, we reached out to the Visual Studio team saying, hey guys, what do you think about building in a feature into Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio on Windows, which is what we use primarily at Teleios? What do you think about building in a feature that allows you to paste JSON as C# dynamics. Well, they said that's a nice idea. So we shared it with them, and maybe that'll become a feature. And if it does, then we first thought about it for our use inside of working on a Power Hour demo. So I think that's pretty cool. So let me stop sharing. And I'm back at my screen. So today we want to look at Odata. If you're familiar with open data, then Odata really is a protocol around how you can build RESTful APIs that expose data. So it's targeted if you have a database containing some set of information and you want to use it via the web, then traditionally you might find that you have your database in a site, and if it's a website, then you're writing sort of queries in SQL, and that those queries are being returned into some object model, which you then use in your application. Instead, you can use a REST-based approach to exposing your APIs, which is what Odata is. So we have a kind of a scenario / story to share. A few years ago, I was coming back from Toko, which is far eastern Trinidad. My wife and I had gone to the beach, so we were coming back from the beach. And on our way back, there was a lady lying on the side of the road. Pretty weird. And someone who appeared to be her daughter standing next to her. So, stopped the car, trying to establish if things are alright or not, and clearly they weren't. And she said, "Oh, my mother just collapsed. Can you call the police?" So we called the police. Our emergency numbers in Trinidad is 999. So we called 999, and the police said, "Okay, well, call." The police said to us, "Call the Toko police station." So the police station's information, the contact numbers for that on their website. But at that time in Toko, we probably didn't have access. Thankfully, though, I had written two apps. One that lists the police station's information in terms of contact numbers for a set of police stations in the country, and another that lists hospital information, as in a set of numbers for hospitals in the country. So when I called the Toko police station, they then said, "Oh, you need to call the Toko hospital or the health center or whatever." So having had those apps, the data was at my hand, and I was able to quickly utilize it to reach out to the authorities for this woman who was in trouble. That story came back to mind when a few weeks ago, Akash and I, Akash works at Teleios, Akash Hiram, we were talking about Odata. And one of the problems in writing those apps, those were just simple apps that were written for the Windows Phone platform because I had a Windows Phone at the time. Those apps were just simple demonstrations for me of what could be done on the platform, on writing mobile apps and that kind of thing. The thing is, getting the data was a bit of a trouble. So let's head over to the Ministry of Health's website in Trinidad. That's health.gov.tt. I mean, I'm glad they have a site. Let's be real, right? It's pretty good that they have a site. So let me share my screen once more. Great. So on the screen you should see health.gov.tt. So I had reached out to the other members of the Teleios development team to kind of talk about an issue here, which is, so let's say you wanted to build a similar application. The Ministry of Health has helpfully provided a set of information about health services in the country, including where the hospitals are and contact information for them. In Trinidad, healthcare facilities are arranged by region, and there are 5. So if you take a look at this page, you can see all the locations of hospitals and health centers and district health facilities and such. So you can see the first one is Orangwell's Health Center, located at Orangwell's Main Road, and phone number. So when I first wrote my app, essentially I had to get this data somehow. And once I got the data, I had to write queries to utilize it. Today, we want to explore sort of how you would do that in Odata. As said, Odata allows you to have a REST-based approach to data on the web. So here's this data. If you wanted to get it, and let me kind of throw it out to the devs at Teleios, how would you go ahead and utilize this data? What would be some of the steps? What would be some of the steps you use to get this data? So we're going to hang out here with a few of the devs from Teleios. Guys, what would you do to try to access this data in an app you're building, for example? And that's just one of the ways you could use the data. While they're kind of firing up, you could see I actually have a demonstration of what that Odata stuff looks like here, and you'll see how I got to this stage. Right, so here's this table, and it's a, if you were to look at the code, you can see it's HTML table, and here's this map containing the locations of those facilities. All right. I would, and I think when I did it the first time, I went ahead and I looked at the HTML for it, and I found a table containing a lot of stuff. It wasn't just, of course, the titles and the content. There's a lot of information about color and styling and sizes, stuff not related to the data, and I just wanted the data. So here's what this turned out to produce. So we have this data. How do you extract it? So when you're building this demo, start with a very kind of simple application structure, and grabbed out all the that HTML table you just saw. As you can see here, it's a table containing the facilities and the contact information. Essentially what you'd want if you're building an application, but stuck inside all the craft of HTML and that kind of stuff. And so that's how you get the HTML out. What about this map stuff? Since this is a Google map, you can actually view the map on Google itself. That's by choosing to start and then going to your own maps. I won't go through that, except to say afterwards, Google lets you download the KML that contains all the features and the layers for that map. So similarly, all this stuff very straightforward. Went up to Google, downloaded the KML, and that produced this file. So now I have KML containing the list of coordinates and hospitals or health facilities or health centers, and a text file containing I said HTML. So we have this. What do we do next? Well, this is where the Odata stuff came in for me. As it turns out, when I first met Odata, and when we were first talking about it, Akash and I were talking about using Odata for Mac databases. So we use it for one of our products, QuickWorks, and we essentially expose the content of our database via web API. And our web API is at ASP.NET. So one approach could be to take all this data and somehow get it into a database and then expose it via an Odata endpoint in ASP.NET. But instead, as it turns out, you can go straight from the data you have in your hand to Odata without having to have a database at the ready. So we have our text file and we have our KML. We need to get the data out anyway, but we don't need the step of database. You can have an in-memory database available for presenting this information as Odata. So I'm going to stop screen sharing and open it up. Teleios people or engineers. I see Ryan, Keisha, Nikel. How would you extract this data? I'm taking a look at it the Hangout.
There's a tool that you can get when you get into a Visual Studio project called the HTML Agility Pack, which provides the process of parsing HTML and pulling out the elements that you need.
Right. So, Ryan, you've used HTML Agility Pack before?
I have not.
You haven't. Anybody else on Teleios has to use HTML Agility Pack? Because I have one question about it, and I wonder if it would handle the KML as well. Ryan, do you know?
Can you show me the KML?
Sure. I have to do a screencast again, right?
Well, actually, look at it to screen share. Is it HTML element in the KML file?
It's XML.
XML, just
yeah.
No, then no, I don't know.
All right. Anyone else? So I'm screen sharing now. You can see the KML. It consists of a document which then contains a bunch of place mark elements, which has then the name and the points that provide location information. I mean, I have used HTML Agility Pack before, but I don't know. I never checked to see if you could do non-HTML things with it. As an XML, that is to be specific. All right. So this is one way of kind of getting this data together.
Well, if the HTML Agility Pack can't parse it, then we could use the normal .NET framework, the XML stuff to parse it.
Right. Using link and X document and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Great. So you've given us, that's really good, Ryan. You've given us two solid approaches to extracting this data. One on the HTML side, because that's all this is, instead of HTML, we can use the HTML Agility Pack to extract it and get the elements out we want to make it into, as you can see here on the right, these class types. I have a health facility, and I have a health service and facility service. We'll come back to those. And then you can use link and XML to kind of pull the data out. All right. I have another solution. I'm going to share it in a bit. I see Ryan, you've pasted into the Hangout a Stack Overflow link. Anyone else?
Forget about the question. Just look at the answer.
All right. Oh wow. So great. So they're using they can do the KML, which is pretty cool. I laughed because I laughed as soon as I saw var XPath. And I was like, oh god, XPath. XPath being part of the way you can navigate an XML document following the XML specification. So anyone else before I jump into what I actually did, what I did on my side?
Hello. So if I wanted to do it, I would probably go the straight JavaScript route. So you could actually convert this table. I don't know if you could show the table on the help on the other
Somebody's
side.
talking. I think they're in a box or something.
I don't know who.
Hello.
That's better.
That sounds better. Yeah.
All right. So, okay. So I was saying if I wanted to get this data out, I would probably go the pure JavaScript route. So you could probably if you show the site on the
All
help
right.
center site.
Yeah.
Right. So essentially, what I would do is convert this table into JSON, and you can do that using pure JavaScript. So you actually,
That might be faster, right?
yeah.
Okay.
Um, so you can convert that to a JSON structure and then use that. I don't know if, well, Odata should be able to use JSON um, documents directly, right, as a data source.
It should. It should. I'll come back to why I paused briefly, but let's say yes for all intents and purposes.
Okay. So yeah, so that's what I would do. The function is actually pretty short to do that. To get the KML stuff, that um, shouldn't be too difficult either. You could actually convert KML to JSON using this fancy tool that I will put in the chat.
Mapbox. Wow. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, everyone, but um, I have a friend. His name is Sheldon Kelly. He introduced me to Mapbox maybe 4 years ago, and they do some amazing stuff. So I'm just saying, hey, Mapbox, what going on? Long time we didn't talk. Very cool. All right. Okay, so Akash, you're saying JSON to overall the solution is JSON. First, you would take this table. So when I came to it, I think when I came to this site, if I want to do something like that, which is kind of extract data from a site or just get some more information about a particular node, and I haven't built the site myself, I tend to pull up console and do the are they using jQuery test, and they're not. You know, because you could just drop that once that dollar sign produces undefined, then they haven't. There's no JSON, no jQuery loaded, but that's fine. You can always load the script yourself. It doesn't take too long. So to follow your steps, Akash, you would load JSON and not load JSON. I'm sorry, load jQuery, and then using that produce JSON from the table. That's pretty snazzy. And then of course use the tool to convert the KML into GeoJSON. And so essentially you'd have JSON all around. And from that, you could probably use, what do you use for JSON? And you get for C Sharp, you know it. Newton Soft, JSON.net, to kind of put it together into one object. And now you have an object in memory that you can do stuff with. That is pretty cool. Just looking at some comments here on the Hangouts. Nika saying no one uses pure.js. We probably could, but it'll take a little while. And Ryan says that only work on a Node app. Nah, it'll work all around, Ryan. So Nickel is saying, Owen, what about using jQuery instead? And maybe it'll be there. So there you go, and that might help us out. But it's not. So we know for sure they don't have it, but as I said, loading jQuery from somewhere hosted online into this console window is very easy. We won't do it right now, but it's definitely available. So I kind of want to head over to the implementation and what I did to get it done. I do like these approaches. So Ryan was HTML agility pack and link. Akash was JSON the whole thing up from JSON using probably jQuery and GeoJSON via Mapbox. If you have time, check out Mapbox as a visualizer of maps and locations online. They have some very compelling stuff. So now that we kind of have a sense of the various things we do, let's take a look on what eventually I did. So I had heard of HTML Agility Pack for a while, and it was probably the first thing I thought of going to. But to be honest, it probably was since 2010, 2011 I had heard about Agility Pack. And when I searched for it, the first thing that came to mind was maybe there's something newer than this one. Maybe, maybe not. And I mean, that's kind of just part of how we kind of build up our Teleios and develop our own skills. We may have done something in one way before, but we're always open to seeing how the technology has changed, how how the world has changed around the approaches we have learned and how we could benefit from that new world. So if you look at my references here, you'd see one that is CS query. And I feel like CS query is kind of like the middle ground of the two approaches between Ryan's, which was essentially very C# focused, and Akash's, which would have leaned perhaps on jQuery. You didn't have to use some of the library, you could do it by hand. Leaned on some kind of set of libraries in JavaScript to produce an object model we could work with. So I use CS query. So let's take a look at these two parsers written. First is facility parser. Really, it's HTML facility parser. I changed the name of the class afterwards, and KML facility parser. With facility parser, it literally gets the facilities by extracting them from the DOM of the HTML. So you can see here in line 16, it creates a DOM. One of the fancy things here, and anybody used this before? This is on line 12. It's a string, right? The source data. Assume this source data equals this content here. That string, you can then say, this guy, a class of type CQ, is instantiated using the string. But notice there's no CQ DOM equals new whatever with string in the constructor. It was just CQ DOM equals source data. And I was like, that real bad. It probably wrong for a while, but I find that's a lot of vibes. And I do think so. Ryan just said, is it CQ extend string? No, I think it's just one of those language features of C#. Notice CQ it's just probably how they've defined the constructors or whatever, the coolness. So I like that. But anyway, that was not the point of anything. So notice if you're familiar with jQuery, I say DOM and give me all the TR elements, and for each one, go ahead and get the facility based on the list of TDs that are children of that TR in question. And notice each one then produces this health facility object. So what I'm going after is making a list of health facility objects. So it's pretty straightforward. Making health facility based on the data that was stored in that TD. I think right. I'm so sorry. Someone just mentioned on chat, hey, your screen is I just looking at it from me alone to look at. It should be much better. There you go. So here's my code to make a health facility. I should mention as well, Anand, who's not here today, he wasn't well, and I think Keisha were talking to me about tuples. Tuple is spelled T-U-P-L-E, friends. It's pronounced tuple and not tuple. Right? Some persons at Teleios may have pronounced it in the past. I wouldn't call their names. When they mentioned, I was like, I know there's no tuple, that's dumb. But I used it here because I wanted to get two things. I was like, hey, I could just use tuple as opposed to making my own abstract data type. So, good job, all of you, for pointing me towards using tuples. So that's where I use that for name and ID. I used it in another place as well, you'll see. So that's the first thing, which is to parse the HTML. And as I said, I use it with the CS query package. Now this is just three methods. Akash, I know we could. It's very similar to what we would do actually if you live in a jQuery world. What do you think?
Yeah, actually, this code looks pretty similar to the JavaScript function that I wrote.
Can you share it? Can we see it now?
Sure.
Let me stop screen sharing.
You'll see in my screen.
Yes.
Yes, so this is the little function that I wrote. Um, well, I didn't write this. I actually found this on Stack Overflow. So yeah, so this is the function here, and this is the output that it produces. Um, it goes through all the rows in the table and finds all the children, pushes them onto the JSON array, and prints out the JSON afterwards.
All right, cool. We're going to use that in a little bit. So we have, coming back to the health facilities, that's the first step in making an object model that we could use for OData stuff. So we got that. It's good to go. Next, we need to associate. So though they presented it on the site together, this is the Ministry of Health guys, um, it's actually two separate sets of data, KML data and the text data. So this is an example of the KML. And as it turns out, for the KML parser, I used CS query once again. So let's take a look at this class. And you can see new parser, it takes the source, extracts locations, and then it expects a little later on to associate those locations with facilities. And extract locations, I don't know if you can see it, but I kind of went too far, I think, with tuples. If you look at line 22, I have a generic list that contains a tuple that then contains another tuple. I'm slightly embarrassed, but this source is actually in GitHub, so feel free to do a pull request at a better approach. So anyway, taking the KML as is, so this KML, as said, is not HTML, it's XML. I parsed it with almost no problems at all, really. So here you can see a DOM being generated based on the source that is sent in. We get a set of placemark elements, and for each element, go through the elements and find the nodes that related to name and point. Once we get that, we essentially have, before, when we did the first parsing, we had a list of health facilities, and they all would be identified by a particular name. If you take a look at this text data here, you can see Irma Health Facility, Aruka, Barataria, and they all have all the data associated with them. In the KML, same names being used and coordinates. So of course you can match by name. So that's what we did to extract locations, and then this method called associate with, and takes a list of facilities and locates the coordinate data and attaches it to that facility. So now we have a list of facilities, and we've combined the facility data with the location data. And we're good to go. We have the, assume we have the object model. Let's dive across now to an example of how to do OData in memory objects. If you wanted to, you could always remember this by searching on your favorite search engine for OData in memory. There's a great step-by-step demo of how to do this on odata.org, which I used. While pulling that up, I noticed Ryan said I needed to be careful before my app tuples under the pressure of so many tuples, which is amazing. At Teleios, we have a thing called Zooks, and I think Ryan just got the Zook of the month with that one. Zook really is a concatenation of a piece of Lorenzo Hodges' name and joke, because Lorenzo is the grand master of Zooks and Teleios. Anyway, back to our URL. So we have essentially a full step-by-step how to use and create an OData for service without entity framework. That means no going to database and creating it and all that stuff. Make your object model, and then you can present it on via the web. So we just did the models part, the step where they say add models. And then making the in-memory data source was a bulk of stuff because that's where the initialization led me to having to go ahead and doing all that parsing stuff. If you remember, that's the two parsers we have over here. Now, if you take a look at our health facility data source, it's a singleton for the sake of this demo, and all it has at the moment is a list of health facilities. Good to go. And when we call initialize, read from the text, read from the KML, and we go ahead and do the association. And now you have a list of facilities. So let's go back. We've initialized, and now they say add controllers. Now with Visual Studio 2015, I have update 3. You can actually add controllers for Odata v4 once you install the extension for VS4 Odata, which is available in the gallery. I wouldn't go into that right now, but the point is you can also do it by hand. So we had a controller. I made my controller health facilities. I did have another one, and then I configured the endpoint using these steps. Very, very straightforward. And after some finagling with this content here, the entity set for the person has to be tied to the actual controller that was created. And this OData route can be changed so you can go to site/OData. Let me show you what that is. Inside of Upstart, you can instead say go to make a route, name it Odata, and let it be prefixed by Odata. And here's my namespace, container my health facility. This is tied to a controller called health facility controller, and super straightforward. All I do here is read the tables, which is text, and the KML, which is text, and create an in-memory source. Now, this is very efficient. This does it. This process happens every time you do a request on the server. So, of course, that could be abstracted out, but it's good enough for a demo. So, having done all of that, if you go to Teleios powerhour2.azurewebsites.net/odata/health facility, you will see our data, sans HTML, craft, and styles, and tables, and all that stuff, pure and useful. In addition to lat longs for where they exist. Now, some places did not have a lat long, so they were left at 00. Which is alright. I mean, we could just kind of be glad for what we have right now. We've done this. So if you're writing a mobile app, you could, of course, there are a lot of frameworks that allow you to connect a mobile app to a JSON data source. This data is in JSON. You could then list it. You can do searches and all that fancy stuff. The power of Odata is not just that it takes a source and converts to JSON. You have that right now with ASP.NET-MVC. You could do that. You could just say I want the data to be returned in a content type, which is application over JSON, and it'll be fine. No biggie there. The power happens in what you could do at the address, which is when you say get. So I put my query string and I say filter. And now I can say region equals, so there's special syntax for equal, because of course it's happening via the query string, so certain characters are already in use, for example the equal sign. So I can say give me all those who are NCRHA. That. Oh, that didn't work. Try once more. Well, I think. Oh, and then again. Query string. Filter. Region equal NCRHA. Oh, can find property name. Oh, great. So this is still a string, so I have to put it in quotes, which I did. So now I have all the hospitals in the NCRHA. For whatever reason, I'm not particularly interested. Here's what I am interested in. See that lat long being 0? It's kind of a problem. Here's why. Let's head over. So I said you can use this if you're writing mobile apps and you want to have like toggles and you wanted to probably search for hospitals by phone number or by address. You could do that because you could use this filter to great effect. You can read up some more on how those Odata filters work at odata.org. Very, very powerful stuff. But here's what. Other applications support Odata as well. Opening up Excel, because Excel handles this stuff pretty well. So I have here new Excel document. So I can say insert, I can say create from other sources a new table. And here I can say from Odata data feed. So I just made an Odata feed. That's what it is. The website is a Odata source. And is that it? No, not that one. Yeah, link or file. I'm sorry. I didn't read the link or file. I saw the file. Right, next. New query on the data tab. I'm clear I did this last evening, so I'm not super worried. Alright, so it's opening up URL. Ah, this looks more familiar. So it's showing me for my data what's being brought up. And I can say load. So now I just, from that Odata feed, pull it into Excel. It's a bit more difficult to pull this data straight from the website like before. So here is that data, right? Fancy enough, I guess. But you could go a little more. Let me see if I find it. Insert 3D map. So now I just pull this data down, which is a table, and using Power Maps in Excel, I could make my own map based on this data. So I can see, I can put filters on this. I can add name as a filter to show only the ones I want to show. I could create categories based on, say, region, and view the data accordingly. Now, if I zoom out a bit, you'll see across here, in this weird place in the world, a bunch of data. So notice it, all this data kind of grouped up. It says lat long 00, and we can count is 9. It's not super useful. So let's get out of this. We just pulled our data via query, right? So let's go back to that. And where was it? Show queries. I'm just editing the query that was used. So notice this was the URL, right? Let's go over to our web page. So add the page, and we can say query filter equal latitude greater than 0. Oh. Let's see what else. Oh, I can't say equal latitude greater than 0. Better than that again. Equal latitude greater than 0. And I can't also say greater than because I'm in the browser. I'm in a REST-based approach using query string. This is just to show you what you can't do. Instead, I have to say GT. And there you see, IGT. I planned all of that. So anyway, so now let's head back to our query editor and replace that previous URL with the URL containing our query, which is okay. And I think we're good. Keep those changes. Notice it reloaded the data. No zeros there. And now we can go back to our map. It's really maps. It's the one we just made. Here is our map. Refresh data. And those zeros are gone. And here's our map once more of our hospitals. So this is kind of cool. Not lie, it's real cool. But notice this chart actually has those dimensions having these bars having a height. You can tie that height to data, but we don't have that data that makes this useful. So it's not very useful to see height like that, though it looks very cool. The next step would be stack chart. Thanks, man. The next step would be to associate some numerical data with those hospitals. Let's say you had number of people coming into the hospital or number of services available at the hospital. And therein lies another part of the challenge that I don't think we have time for today, but I'd love to hear some. I already had some good ideas from Akash on how to get that. We have, at the moment, health facility location data that we're displaying in Power Maps. But if you go back, there's also services data. Each of these links will take you to a service that tells you what the schedule is for that service. So Monday to Friday, morning and afternoon. But they're stuck in these HTML tables. I really like Akash's approach because, as it turns out, that JSON could run very easily. However, we have 114 or so hospitals. So let me ask our Teleios guys again, how would we get that data? I mean, Akash, what's the next step for your solution?
Automate it. So we could write a little robot, probably in Node.js, that will automatically click through all the links, generate the JSON, and dump it somewhere that we could use.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I heard, Niall, when you were talking earlier, you had another approach. Let's hear about it.
The only thing I was saying was just to check to see if they had any network code that get the information before the config on the page. So that would be my first thing I would try to do, and that was all I was talking about.
Right, right. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but looking at this data, those network call first things tend to be associated with sites that have some JSON, perhaps you're not necessarily changing the page. Based on how this looks, but let's confirm. You're saying for this call, take a look at network tab to see what's going on, to see if there are any prior service calls, perhaps like how this one does here. And determine where that data is going. And like there are quite a few now, to be honest, but I don't know which one. It's a lot, right?
I'm not sure of any, yeah. But all the GA stuff, that is Google.
Let's Google Analytics, right?
Analytics, yeah, so the other way.
Alright, cool. I do like that, but I think I'd probably use that approach for more modern solutions. So there's the Akash's JSON or node approach. I guess that's the approach we have this evening. I mean, we could do another version of what I had done with CS query, where we, since we have all the facilities, we have all the facility IDs, we could just go ahead and probably on a 4 pull down all the pages and use CS query to pull out the data. One of these, I guess, last things we could say about this is, let me pull back up the page. This data itself, it's troublesome in the sense that what we have is row all down the way, right? And you have to figure out that the HTML elements go from left to right and then down. So what you'd end up with is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, AM, general practice space, travel for clinic space. So the process of sorting the data itself is non-trivial. It's straightforward, as in you know what you're doing, but you have to write quite a bit of code to convert that into meaningfulness. So we won't do that today. Ryan is suggesting for the other data you could overlay here, you could overlay population data to show how overworked facilities are. Like, that's such a true thing, because I was talking to a doctor just recently and she was saying, as it turns out, distributions of finance is just based on region as opposed to utilization. So one hospital may get the same amount of money as another, but because of how many persons go to, let's say, the hospital in the city, a rural hospital may not have the same kind of issues around managing its resource. Justin Gittins, one of our analysts at Teleios, is just saying, well, you know what? You can overlay the data we have in terms of hospitals with reports of Zika outages. Perhaps as well, if we get to doing the services part of this, we can have a relationship demonstrated between the services available at a particular facility or health center and the incidence of outbreak of different kinds of disease. So the whole world opens once you open your data. And so this really wasn't meant to be so much of a making noise for OData and open data, so much as how you can bring a set of concerns together. So this is what we did a few weeks ago at Teleios, and we wanted to share it at Teleios our live. If there are no closing comments, I think we'll wrap it up there. Oh, as said, this code is available on Teleios' repository and GitHub. You can go to github.com. I'll screen share one more time. Screen share one more time, and it's github.com organizations, and this is called Fun with Health OData. So if you want to extend this yourself, perhaps add the features to support services, that'll be very cool. It'll be cool, of course, as well to share this with ministries and other members of government, because, of course, open data and its related benefits is something that we're sure they'll be interested in hearing how it could be used. So that is it. This has been another edition of Teleios Power Hour. Thank you for joining.